Okay, good morning, everybody. Great to be here. As somebody mentioned, I am Deva-Dee Siliee. I work with Rechapers, and it's a pleasure for us to be part of um, this webinar. As Reshapers, we work a lot on transformation and on digital technologies included. Mostly we work on the human side of change. So a lot of my presentation today will be covering the human side of transformation. I'm not a digital expert, but you are. So I invite you to join me in thinking about the human side today, because I think for any transformation to be successful, it's not just about the technological aspect. It's not just about integrating the technological processes, but in essence, it's a strategic, cultural, and human-centered journey. And leadership is an important engine that drives it. In our work with both NGOs, with companies large and small, with schools working on a transformation, whether it is digital or other transformation project, leadership sets the tone. And I saw some of your answers on Menti as well, having experience with no encouragement from leaders, or having experience where leadership might not understand what priorities to set or what investments to make, what infrastructure to adopt. So it's very important that we talk about leadership in digital transformation. Right. I did review some of the webinars, and I found the assessment tool very interesting. So I just wanted to start with that as a reminder. So you have the different dimensions, the steps in digital systemic, and one of them is leadership of digital transitions. So the assessment tool is a way for your organization, your youth work organization, to self-assess where you are. And some of the sub-elements that they look at in this assessment is there visible and committed leadership? So do you experience the commitment of leaders and management to fully support the digital transformation? Is there a digital strategy or a plan? And to what extent is this plan integrated in the organization? Is this recognized? And is there actually action to implement? And mainstreaming, it's not just a topic that is a responsibility of IT or responsibility for a specific subset of the organization, but digital youth work is open, accessible, and in this case, applicable to all. So with starting with this as a reminder, because I know you covered it already, I wanted to dive into the topic of leadership. And taking a broad view and some theory here is what are the leadership gaps that we often encounter in today's digital work? So what are these reasons that leaders sometimes aren't as ready to lead in the digital world as they think? This can be, first of all, a deficiency in digital savviness coupled with an outdated mindset. So in this regard, thinking that other people need to invest their time and resources into understanding digital tools or understanding digital platforms, but I, as a leader, do not need to do that. Also thinking that the change might not affect us as much as we think, right? We, as youth work organizations, perhaps we all know how important it is to be close to youth, to understand their needs, to be able to take their needs and their voices into account. And if there are leaders that have mindsets where they think, well, I don't think I can do that digitally, or it's not necessary for us to completely engage in that. That could be a big gap, as we all understand nowadays that most of us are digital, and the youth is going to be even more digital than we are. There could be a series of blind spots, like strategic blind spot, cultural blind spot, human capital, or personal blind spot. And that prevents them from clearly identifying and stipulating the path forward for the organization. And there could be multiple tensions that undermine the strategic execution, such as competing priorities, investments that need to be made in people, in structures, in infrastructure, which could be also reasons why leaders are either distracted or do not necessarily understand the full scope of why it's important to invest and lead a digital transformation. So what are some important leadership dimensions? As leaders, it's important for you to set the tone. Herein, vision and narrative. How do you create shared purpose and excitement around the digital transition? What is the story? I'll get into all of these dimensions after this. How do you make sure that you're cultivating and nurturing a culture where that is open to transformation? How do you build the case for also psychological safety for change? And how do you, again, nurture these mindsets purposefully in the day-to-day work, in the processes, in the way people think together, in the way people collaborate, in the way people learn at work, and the way people share their learning. I know that in the past week, there was a presentation on building innovative cultures. So this goes also back to that. How do you, as a leader, establish strategic focus and planning? How do you help your team prioritize what matters most in this transition? How do you equip people to act with confidence? So providing here the resources that they need, the support that they need at the right moments that they do need it. And how do you build in recognition and rituals that sustain momentum and belief? So starting with one of the first dimensions. So the case for change. Why? Oftentimes, when we think about digital transformation, we have to establish that it is not tech driven, it is youth driven. So, making the case for change is making the case for why are we embracing digital transformation? Why are we incorporating digital tools? If people are resistant to doing that because they might be fearful of the dangers for youth, also fearful of not being able to connect with youth or etc. The case for change needs to establish how this will actually help drive the cause of youth work forward. So connecting the digital transformation to the purpose of the organization, really visualizing and communicating how integrating digital strategies will actually benefit the youth, the youth work, digital youth work that you're doing, and how it will help you reach, engage, and support youth in the different needs that they have. So perhaps vocalizing that and making the case for change, starting with why. Painting that picture, inspiring picture of what digital can make possible. What can it make possible for the staff? Working more efficiently, being more present, even reaching a more people, reaching diverse groups of youth, the mission itself. Ensure that everybody understands the benefits in human terms. So the story, right? What is the story that will stick and that will motivate people to go into that change curve? Because using digital tools or incorporating digital strategies is for many people a change. So going into the change curves means that they might be fearful, they might still have some resistance. We'll get into some of that later. So communicating the benefits in human terms makes them identify and actually start the change curve themselves, and framing the change and not just what needs to happen. So how will we include digital strategy, but also firm about what needs to stop happening in the organization. So what are some of the criteria and the conditions in this? How do we want you to work, and really positioning the choice of the organization to incorporate digital youth work in essence. And then the culture and mindset. So oftentimes what we see in a pyramid, right, is behaviors. We see resistance, or we might see people that are, even though they have digital tools, might not use them as might not be willing or excited to use them. So there could be various behaviors that we're seeing. As a leader, it's your role, your responsibility to start thinking about what underlying structures might be influencing these behaviors, or what types of mindsets and beliefs might be driving these behaviors. And really understanding that means that you are able to also understand how you can serve as a cultural architect, how you can tie the culture and the mindset that's necessary for the transformation, communicating these in the core values of the organization, communicating what type of behaviors that you would like to see. And also model that mindset, invite people to consider different ways of thinking, nurturing these, and also nurturing a culture where people are willing and open to try, to experiment, to prototype, and in that sense, be agile, right? And seeing your role as a role of guiding and trusting the team to organize and evolve. As long as you are modeling the mindset, you are understanding the structures, adapting the structures as you go, and also observing the behaviors and adapting as you go along. If we're talking about vision and narrative, culture and mindset, especially going back to the self-assessment, planning, having a digital youth work plan is one of the indicators. So there's different ways that you can go about. You can do appreciative inquiry, discovering, designing, and then getting to a final plan. I wanted to prompt you here to ask some questions. So as a leader coming to strategic focus and planning, ask questions. So plan to listen. And a powerful way of doing that is phrasing, how might we questions? And doing this, not just as I heard earlier, not just with the stakeholders that you always do that, or with just the staff, but really incorporating the different groups that you're working with, whether it's educators, whether it's other nonprofit or community leaders, whether it's, and of course, the youth themselves. So asking them, how might we move from the system that we're currently implementing, or the way that we're currently doing youth work, to incorporating more digital platforms? How might we go from minimal level of engagements online to really creating a safe place? How might we incorporate the digital rights of youth? So plan to listen by asking those questions. And then plot to plan. Where are we now? What have we learned? And how do we move forward, right? Perhaps you have been experimenting with some tools. What have we learned? Taking time to plot and reflect ensures that you know how to move forward. Do you need to make up in terms of training? So investing more and ensuring that now that you might have the platforms or the infrastructure in place, that you actually invest more in training. So asking those questions might help you in the time of transition to understand where you are. What do you need to focus on? Is it your people? Is it the platforms? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the competencies, as I mentioned, the training? Plan to prototype. So sometimes in planning, we want to have everything laid out. And the importance here is and I read another document on some recommendations for digital youth work. It's not just that digital youth leaders might be insecure. It's also that you have to stay agile. So plan to prototype is a perfect way of ensuring that you remain agile as an organization. So identify and test maybe prototypes. So what digital youth projects or youth work do we want to start with and test, and then scale to reach more youth, or to engage them differently, or to achieve different results given the mission or the goals of those projects. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, there might be competing priorities. There might be different tensions within the organizations as well, as to where people want to go with youth work. Some with more emphasis on digital, others not, or perhaps different viewpoints on how to go digital. So plan to design alignment and manage differences. So the stakeholders, the ones driving the change, the ones benefiting from the change, youth, community leaders, identify them, include them, and also ask yourself questions as a leader. What signs will you look for? Will you look to recognize when you feel stakeholders are not aligned? The transformation, we're not progressing in the transformation as we want to. What questions will I ask to determine, for example, indicators, right? So take time in any transformation to design moments of alignment, to design moments where you take polls of the room, of the stakeholder, where there might be differences in terms of approach, differences in terms of implementation, and find time to see how you can bridge and manage those differences in order to overcome also resistance. Plan for success. That means, once again, if you have the vision and narrative, you need to have a clear picture of how success will be defined and measured. This will help to create structure and focus as well when you are creating a digital youth work plan. How will we define and measure success? What does that mean for our beneficiaries, our stakeholders? What does it mean for our staff? What does it mean perhaps for our board or for our funders, right? How will you define, measure, and communicate it? And plan not just on being agile, having a checklist of how you launch products, platforms, digital tools, and digital rooms, but how do you do, not just how you do agile, but how do you are you remaining agile? And that requires, once again, the mindset, the culture, the people making transitions because any change requires also an internal transition. We'll get to a little bit of the more human side and the difference between change and transition in a minute. So plan not just on doing agile things in order to launch products or plans, but in staying, in being agile in order to create the environment where people can learn and adapt continuously. That is very important because digital transformation is a process. It might not always be a end result. So it's also a process that is not just a switch. As a leader, from vision to planning, you also need to provide the learning and support. And learning can be formal, but it can also be a part of the job. And oftentimes in our work, what we experience is if you create a learners organization, a learning organization, so it's part of the culture and mindset, learning is part of the job. So you're normalizing that there is a learning curve. You provide space for it, and you remove as many barriers to learning as possible. And that includes offering inclusive learning opportunities. I saw a comment earlier on perhaps age. So when we're talking about offering inclusive learning opportunities, you take into account where learners are at. Where are they starting? How do I make sure that they are, where are they on the learning curve, on a change curve, and how do I guide them to arrive at the end results that we all want to, where we all want to be? How do we build networks that are peer-to-peer or perhaps organization to organization and avenues of mutual support that people feel as if they're not just alone in a challenge, they're not stuck with questions on digital transformation, what tools to use, how best to do their work, how best to support youth in a digital environment, but they know where to get support. They know where to go for a learning. Of course, this is also an individual responsibility. And this goes back to the cultural part. If you are creating a learning organization and you're nurturing a culture where you're embedding openness to that transition, people understand also that they can ask for help. They can identify, I need help, I need learning, and take on that responsibility of individual learning as well. Yes. And then final dimension that I really wanted to focus on here is recognition and rituals. Um, Recognizing, even if it's small steps, even if it's people that were afraid to begin that are beginning, that are trying new concepts, that are open and asking questions. So celebrate and recognize that progress. Some organizations might be at the start, and that even having people excited and aligned is a step. So celebrate and recognize that progress, not perfection. Celebrate and recognize the effort, not just the outcome. Perhaps you wanted to launch a product, a ready-made product or a new a project, but you have a prototype and you have a way to start, and you have small sessions to try it out with youth. So recognize that you are taking steps to achieve at the outcome you want to achieve. Ritualize the values that you want to embrace. Ritualize experimentation, reflection. This goes together again with the cultural aspect. Encourage people to stretch and experiment. This could be by organizing, digital lessons learned, what's working, what's challenging, what's worth repeating, how do we check in with each other. If you embed those rituals, you're also taking a step in leading the transition and creating the right environment for it. And amplify voices through stories. Does somebody have a story on how they experimented with a new digital tool, a new digital strategy? Use that story to get others to understand a lived experience. And that lived experience might resonate with someone who might be fearful of taking this step, and they might recognize themselves in that story. And that is important also to help people start to transition. So recognition affirms effort and affirms that people are excited to continue putting in effort in whatever transition, and rituals provide the meaning. Meaning on why are we doing this? What do we want to accomplish? And being part of a collective that's going through this transformation together. So those are some of the dimensions for leading digital transformation and that I wanted to cover. And now I want to focus a bit on the more human and personal side, right? Because change is not the same as transition, and change could be we adopted the new site. It could be that we have a new IT manager. It could be that we have a new somebody with a new role or a new policy. Transition is really understanding the process that people go through to come to terms with the situation and what they need to really embrace the full scope of possibilities and opportunities that they are being offered. So, what this means, and oftentimes when we think of transformation and change, there's something we see, right? The external part, and there's the internal transition. And that's why when we're dealing and we're leading whatever type of transformation, but specifically when it comes also to digital transformation, there's the aspect of what you see, um, the new tools that we can use, the technologies that we can integrate, the platforms, the infrastructure, even the methods. And then there's the aspect that we don't see. And those are the transitions that people need to go on. And where your role as a leader is to really guide them and understand what they need by asking questions. And that is for the organization, the youth work organization, but it's also for the way you engage with youth. right? The beneficiaries of the transformation as well. What would they need to trust us and to work with us and to use our services and uh, knock on our doors to get the support and the engagement and the work that we provide, right? So if you and your organization are currently facing digital transformation, think also about that emotional journey and start to think about, okay, where are we as a team and how ready are we? What unique challenges do our team dynamics pose, and how can we turn that into opportunities? How do we explore, right? Understanding that it's a curve and you go from denial, resistance, exploration, and ultimately to commitment. Um, Finally, another model also that we use often in our work is the ADKAR model for change: awareness of the need for change, desire to participate. So making sure that people are aware of why are we um, in a digital transformation. Um, Desire, creating that desire with vision for people to participate and support, providing knowledge, how do I want you to change, and ability. I think my time is almost up, so I'm just going to go through it quickly. We talked about the curve already, the role of emotions in transition, match any emotions that they are in your team or your organization with the right support. And then finally, as a leader, you want to be role modeling because people want to see leaders and colleagues doing things differently. They want to understand what is being asked of them, and it needs to make sense. They want to have the skills and opportunities to behave in a new way, and they want to have formal mechanisms. They want to see structures, processes, and systems that support the changes that are being asked of me to make. So, in summary, leaders are vision setter, culture shapers, support builders, and connectors. Yes.